If you're sick and tired of squeezing into airplane seats that keep getting smaller and smaller, too bad. The Wall Street Journal had the CEOs of Delta and American cram into coach seats aboard their planes to see how it feels. Their conclusion? You won't be getting extra legroom anytime soon in economy class. In fact, their solution for squash flyers is to pay up. Can you imagine saying that? You have to pay up.
I couldn't believe that.
I mean, that is crazy. Like,
I mean, it is true that you can pay for more legroom or whatever, but then also every flight is full. So there is no incentive for airlines to change their planes. If people have to get somewhere, they're going to buy a seat.
The CEO, it's funny, the two CEOs, the Delta CEO, Ed Bastian, is 6'3". The American CEO, Doug Parker, is also 6'3". The United CEO refused to do this, actually, refused to sit in the back and do the interview. But my thing is, they say that the people were able to fit back there. No one in front of them was reclining. I think the recliner, that's the problem. Somebody in front of you reclines, and then if you're 6 feet tall, I mean, maybe for you and I, Greg, it would be okay, but if you're 6 feet tall, your knees are going to go through. And Dana, listen.
Look, you know what the big problem here? It's not about the seating. People don't mind. Like, a lot of people don't mind flying like that because they don't fly that often. These are big. The Wall Street Journal readers fly a lot, so they get this. I think the bigger problem is they got to figure out as soon as possible, they got to change the seating and loading of passengers, because we have this big problem right now with status inequality. You go on Instagram and you just see how much better people's lives are. The idea of having people in coach walking through first class, I think, is just such a disillusioned practice. They got to fix that. Load coach first, and then load first last. How simple is that?
No, I don't like that idea, because if you fly first class, then you have to wait, and it's better to get on and relax. But I do dislike sometimes being in coach, and it hurts my ego, because what you'll do is you'll walk past all of these people in first class, and everyone's like, hey, Waters, and then you'll walk past economy comfort, and they're like, oh, can I get a selfie? And I'm like, sure. And by the time you get to the way back, by the bathroom, they're like, Waters, what are you doing back here? Is Fox paying you anything? So it's a humiliating experience, but since I'm so humble, I can handle it.
What about you, Juan? How do you feel? I mean, you're pretty
there's
tall.
me on a private jet.
Oh, is that you?
Well, great timing, you guys. I fly coach, and then they show you a picture of you.
How do you fit in the seats in the back?
I don't like it, and especially toward the back of the plane. Like if you're in, I don't often get in the back anymore, but I mean, I used to travel the country as a journalist, you know, doing campaigns and covering the White House, and sometimes you'd be in the back of the plane. You know, if you get on a plane in the back, it's just terrible. It's hot. You can't breathe. It just aggravates my claustrophobia. But I will say that the worst part now is that they're actually shrinking the bathrooms.
Yes.
So the bathrooms now will make you just crazy. You think, how can you even move to, like, wash your hands? It's pretty. And then the reclining seats that you were talking about.
Reclining seats
makes me nuts.
It's not the hand washing that's hard.
But you know, so then I'm reading the Wall Street Journal article, and it says, though, for every additional seat that an airline can fit in there, $400,000 more per year, so they have an incentive to do this.
We have to talk about this, because this is the biggest problem, which is when you have to pee and you're on the tarmac. It is outrageous that they can tell you that you can't go to the bathroom, which is harmful to your body.
Wait, you listen to them?
No, I hear that the rule is just get up.
Yeah, that's what I do.
Can we show my picture real quick of me on the plane? And then we should do that with that other story. We have it.
Oh, there's...
But I mean, everybody's got a pee story.
Yes, I do. I had one on a tarmac. I didn't. I held it, but yes.
Yeah, but you have one on Amtrak. You have stories about the bathroom on Amtrak.
No, I do. It's because the door doesn't lock, so the door will slide open while you're doing your business. And being a famous person, I don't need pictures taken of me doing my business.
Yeah, that's disturbing.
One more thing. One more thing is coming up next.
I'm telling you, man.
Fly like a G6, like a G6, like a G6.
Time now for one more thing. There's a Japanese baby that's taken the internet by storm. Look at the head of hair on this little child.
Whoa.
Look at that. It's like little Elvis.
It's like little Jesse.
Baby Chanko or something. Got 120,000 followers. Pretty good. So I was thinking, how would I look with hair like that? Do we have? There it is.
Oh, it's the same.
Wait a second. I think it's diamond and silk.
Oh. You'll never give that up. All right, Dana, go ahead.
Okay, so you want to hear about a rescue dog that rescues a dog? Well, here you go. Over the weekend, Tino, a search and rescue dog from McCleary, Washington, rescued another dog named Puppy, which might need a better name. He had been missing and stuck in a dense, mud-filled gully for over 40 hours. He started the search at 4:30 a.m. Saturday morning and found Puppy stranded less than half a mile from his home. He was eventually freed after rescuers were forced to use ropes in order to pull the dog to safety. And it was Tino's first rescue mission. Congratulations, Tino. Don't forget the I'll Tell You What podcast post today on Wednesday.
That is a great name for a dog, Puppy.
Puppy.
All right, Greg.
All right, it's time for Greg's plugs. It's pointing at my hair. Anyway, on my podcast, if you go to foxnewspodcast.com, it's with the controversial film critic Armand White, who writes for National Review. Check it out. It's a great interview. We talk about all sorts of movies. Also, if you haven't ordered my book, Liberals, Liars, and Leakers.
That's not the right book.
That's not the right book. Yeah, you know that hers is #1 for going.
Yep.
See, you got to go on The View. I'm not going on The View, but order. Prove that I don't have to go on The View. Make it #1.
I would love to see you on The View.
Go to Amazon.com or
do it.
Yeah, all right.
Simon & Schuster, wherever you want to go.
Juan Williams.
Remember that song, The Lion Sleeps Tonight? Well, it really happened in Ashland, Oregon. Take a look at this video, folks. Lauren Taylor came home to find a mountain lion, entered the house through a back door. Her roommate screamed, and the lion hid behind the sofa. And then you guessed it, the lion took a nap for several hours. When he finally woke up, or she woke up, Taylor hit a drum to get it to go out. The lion left without harming anyone.
Wow.
Video encounter gone viral, more than 24,000 views.
It's like the movie The Hangover. Remember that? They woke up, it was in the bathroom.
See, I'd be stupid enough to be like, oh, come in.
Come here, kitty.
Like, kitty. You know, that would happen to me.
The lion's name was Lion, by the way.
Lion.
I got jealous of Juan's story, so I had to do a story about a lioness. A little girl, Mila Chandler, was carrying around her favorite stuffed animal. She was at the Oklahoma City Zoo, and Moto, a 3-year-old lion, sees the stuffed animal, and look, he wants to play with it.
He wants to eat the baby.
Oh, he's trying to
Why do you guys coo at a monster?
All right, never miss an episode of The Five. Special report up next. Brett, go ahead.
You guys have too much fun. Thanks, Jesse.
Nope.
This is a Fox News Alert. I'm Brett Baer in Washington. We are following 3 major breaking stories tonight. First, President Trump strikes a new trade deal with the European Union to work toward the elimination of most tariffs. The Secretary of Commerce, Wilbur Ross, will be here live in studio with specific details about this deal in a few minutes. Also, the President's Secretary of State still sparring with senators up on Capitol Hill over his boss's relationship with Vladimir Putin and the way forward with North Korea. And then candidate Trump and his lawyer on tape discussing hush money for a former Playboy model. That story plus Alan Dershowitz is here to analyze the fallout. First, though, President Trump and the head of the European Commission went toe-to-toe, eye-to-eye today in an increasingly hostile financial environment. And as our own Neil Cavuto said today, Europe blanked. President Trump says the U.S. and the EU will work towards 0 tariffs as part of a major new agreement. Europe also increasing its purchase of American energy and agriculture products. This is being characterized as a major win for the president tonight. Correspondent Peter Ducey starts us off with details. Good evening, Peter.
Good evening, Brett. The president has been trying to reassure Americans affected by the bubbling trade war that any pain they're feeling is only temporary. And today, Americans hoping for a better deal with Europe only had to wait a couple of hours for promising and surprising news.
This was a very big day for free and fair trade.
That's because President Trump and the European Commission President Jean-Claude Juncker did a 180 on public threats of increasing tariffs.
We agreed today, first of all, to work together towards 0 tariffs, 0 non-tariff barriers, and 0 subsidies on non-auto industrial goods.
Steel tariffs, aluminum tariffs, and tariffs imposed as retaliation are now set to be resolved.
I had the intention to make a deal today, and we made a deal today.
The president's posture going into this meeting was clear last week at a cabinet meeting when he indicated punishing tariffs would be possible if talks with the EU weren't productive.
If we don't negotiate something fair, then we have tremendous retribution, which we don't want to use, but we have tremendous powers. We have to. Including cars. Cars is the big one.
In today's deal, European partners also agreed to import more American natural gas and soybeans. That's good news for an industry where prior to this afternoon's announcement, farmers like Wisconsin's Michael Slattery have been planning for the worst.
I will attempt to reduce my acreage of corn and soybeans. I will look to plant more small grains.
But until the burden of the trade war shifts away from farmers, the president has approved $12 billion in emergency aid for the industry, relief Democrats disagree with.
The president's bailout is like a Soviet-style program where the government props up an entire sector of the economy.
The Trump administration seems more hopeful that a new NAFTA deal can smooth things over with America's neighbors soon.
We hope that the Mexican deal can be done very quickly, possibly by the end of August or before September. Then Canada will hopefully follow suit.
Republicans hope trade tensions with China can be resolved quickly, too, so economic gains from tax reform don't disappear.
I think the president's right in kind of pushing the envelope like he did with NATO investment, but we need to settle it down, get back to the growth message.
Something that didn't change today are those trade tensions with China. So late this afternoon, President Trump huddled with more than a dozen GOP lawmakers to talk next steps. I spoke to North Dakota Senator John Hoeven on his way over there. He is supportive, and he said the president is just trying to treat other countries the way they treat the U.S. Brett?
Peter, thank you. Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross is walking down the hall right now. We'll bring him on the set in just a moment. Just as soon as he walks in the door here. Stocks jumped late this afternoon when reports of the trade deal came out ahead of the president's announcement. The Dow was up 172. The S&P 500 finished ahead 26. The NASDAQ jumped 91, closing at a record high. The president's top diplomat says Russia will pay a price if it meddles in the midterms. But Secretary of State Mike Pompeo had some fiery exchanges with senators, pressing for specific details of exactly what was said between President Trump and Vladimir Putin during their one-on-one meeting at the Helsinki summit. Chief Congressional Correspondent Mike Emanuel is on Capitol Hill with some tense moments today at that hearing.
I personally made clear to the Russians that there will be severe consequences for interference in our democratic processes.
Pompeo told members of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee he's been firm with Moscow, saying sanctions won't be eased.
There will be no relief of Crimea-related sanctions until Russia returns control of the Crimean Peninsula to Ukraine.
The Foreign Relations chairman put Pompeo in an awkward spot by criticizing President Trump's behavior.
What is it that causes the president to purposely create distrust in these institutions?
You somehow disconnect the administration's activities from the president's actions. They're the one and the same.
I notice that you are not responding to what I'm saying.
There were some testy moments with the panel's top Democrat, New Jersey Senator Bob Menendez, on the Trump-Putin summit.
Senator, I'm telling you what he had a conversation with Vladimir Putin about, and I'm telling you what U.S. policy is today. I understand, Senator, I understand the game that you're playing.
No, you know, Mr. Secretary, with all due respect, I don't appreciate you characterizing my questions. My questions is to get to the truth. We don't know what the truth is.
Menendez and Pompeo also sparred over North Korea.
Did they agree to end the production and enrichment of uranium and plutonium for military programs?
Senator, I would welcome the chance to respond to your questions. If you'd let me finish, it would be most simple. Yes or no. I think it'd be most illuminating for the folks watching.
It's a simple yes or no.
Following the high-profile Singapore summit with Kim Jong-un, Pompeo said the U.S. is pressing for results.
We're engaged in patient diplomacy, but we will not let this drag out to no end. I emphasize this position in the productive discussions I had with Vice Chairman Kim Young-chol.
Pompeo also highlighted how pressure from President Trump and his administration has led to NATO allies spending more and making the alliance stronger.
Last year's $14.4 billion in new spending was a 5.1% increase. It was the largest in a generation. 8 allies will meet the 2% this year. 18 are on track to do so by 24.
Several lawmakers argued there must be a serious cost when Russia or others attack the U.S., such as the election meddling. And there were appeals from lawmakers for the Trump administration to use all the sanctions available to teach Moscow a lesson. Brett?
Mike Emanuel live on the Hill. Mike, thanks. National Security Advisor John Bolton today said Russian leader Vladimir Putin will not visit Washington until next year, after the conclusion of the Mueller probe, he said. President Trump had indicated his Russian counterpart might be coming sometime this fall. As we promised at the top of the show, and that lead story about trade, let's get more on the trade agreement. Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross has made his way over from the White House and joins us on set. Mr. Secretary, thanks for being here.
Good to be on, Brett.
We had the setup piece, but not too many details. Where can you fill in the blanks about this trade deal with the EU?
Well, I think there are several very significant aspects. There were no preconditions to the negotiations, no requirement that we drop any of the 232 tariffs just to get talks going. As you know, that had been an original EU request. They came very prepared to do business. We came prepared to do business. And I think this really breaks the ground because it has now set the parameters. Everything is on the table.
Yeah, I'm talking zero tariffs, possibly.
Right. President made clear at the G7, although, as you remember, nobody paid any attention, that his end game is zero tariffs, zero non-tariff trade barriers, zero subsidies, and zero barriers to our market access. So 4 big zeros.
Yeah. He also specifically talked about soybeans and also industrial products.
Right. Well, it's more than soybeans. All agricultural products are something that will be discussed. Soybeans was simply a very timely example of those.
So as you know, farmers are concerned, and a lot of farmers in the Midwest and different areas. Here is one farmer we talked to who's just not sure. Take a listen.
What concerns me is they have made this announcement, and the details are not yet clear. They probably won't be clear until a month before the election. So this is an election ploy, and we as farmers are playing the dupes again in this whole process. That's what concerns me.
So they're feeling it. So does this kind of relieve that a little bit? I mean, what do you tell farmers tonight?
Well, first of all, the announcement of yesterday that we're going to spend up to $12 billion to help the farmers is a pretty tangible announcement and a very strong one. Second, we're very keenly aware that they have a harvest coming in September and October. That's a very critical time period for them. We're also aware that China apparently loaded up on soybeans some months earlier, deliberately to go out of the market for a little while to depress the prices prior to the midterm elections, trying to put political pressure on the president.
You've got these folks speaking out in those states, Republican lawmakers who are supportive of your administration, who are really feeling the pinch back home. Some of them saying, I mean, it's not just soybeans, it's corn, it's other agricultural products, that there have to be other things to do. I mean, are you thinking of other things while you're in this battle with China?
Well, surely. One very good example is the arrangements we started to make today with the EU, because it's not only China that has put in retaliatory tariffs, it's also EU. In addition, Mexico. Mexico's a very big importer of agricultural goods. And
so is the NAFTA deal almost wrapped up?
Well, I wouldn't say almost wrapped up, but it's coming along very, very well. We hope that could be within the next couple of months. The new president is engaging. He's picked his team. There's an overlap with the former administration's team. He's indicated he's broadly on board with what's been done thus far and is looking forward to closing the last few gaps.
You know, the president asked for patience the other day, and there are lawmakers up there who are getting a little impatient, and they are not sure of the strategy here. If you were to lay it out in a blueprint for people sitting at home, what is it?
Well, the strategy is this. It took us since World War II to get to the current unfortunate trade deficit. Right after World War II, American public policy was rebuild Europe, rebuild Asia, partly with Marshall Plan and things like that, but also partly with unilateral trade concessions. Those were good then, but should have been time limited. concessions that we made that were appropriate to Germany, to Japan, to China in 1950 are no longer appropriate because they're no longer small, struggling economies. They're now world powerhouses, particularly in export. So it's a lot of history that we have to deal with. What we now need is to lower the barriers that they were permitted to erect relative to us, get market access, which is really what the farmers want and what our manufacturers want, get market access, get rid of these artificial trade barriers, and get rid of the tariffs. EU tariffs average over 10% on farm products, and they have a lot of non-science-based standards that preclude our products coming in.
I had a corn farmer the other day say, what about increase the ethanol mandate a few percentage points while you're doing this battle?
Right. Well, that's not a trade issue. That's really a policy issue for the congressional leaders to get to deal with as well.
China, it seems, deals with a different calendar. Are you going to be able to wait them out and pressure them enough while feeling some of this pain in some of these states, and many of them are targeted because they're Republican swing states that could mean a difference to control of Congress?
Oh, sure. The Chinese have done a very, very good job figuring out the political map and how to target it. But you look at their recent announcements, infusions of capital into the banks, lowering reserve requirements, letting their currency drift downward. They're feeling pain themselves. They're also finding it not so easy to substitute for all of our farm products. You're going to see, once they run out of the soybeans that they artificially built up, they can't just get all the beans from Brazil. And here's why. Brazil is 55% of the beans they buy. We're 33%. For Brazil to replace us, they would have to increase their exports to China by 60%. Well, guess what? If Brazil could have done it that much an increase at an economical price, they already would have done it. They didn't have to wait for this conflict. So they're finding it not so simple to deal with their own retaliation.
But you're calling today a win.
I think today is a win both for the EU and for the United States, because our objective is zero tariffs, zero trade barriers, zero subsidies, zero restrictions on market access. We think the EU now is interested in the same direction.
Mr. Secretary, we appreciate you hustling over from the White House. Thanks for the time.
Thank you.
Up next, candidate Trump caught on tape with his lawyer discussing a payment to a woman claiming an affair. Law professor Alan Dershowitz is here to analyze. First, here's what some of our Fox affiliates around the country are covering tonight. Fox 2 in San Francisco, as thick smoke from a wildfire near the western edge of Yosemite National Park is prompting park officials to temporarily close some areas through Sunday due to concerns about public health and safety. All hotels, campgrounds, and visitor services will be closed, meaning thousands of campers and hotel guests must pack up and leave. Fox 2 in Detroit, as former Michigan State and USA Gymnastics Dr. Larry Nassar says he has been assaulted by fellow inmates inside an Arizona prison. He's also asking for a resentencing on state charges. Nassar was sentenced to 40 to 175 years in prison after more than 160 women came forward to share their stories of sexual abuse during an extraordinary 7-day hearing in Ingham County. And this is a live look at Miami from our affiliate, WSVN. The big story there tonight, an appeals court says news organizations are entitled to obtain surveillance video showing law enforcement response to the Valentine's Day mass shooting at a Florida high school. That upholds a lower court's ruling that the video is public record and must be disclosed. The media request for video focuses on footage of law enforcement actions, not the massacre itself or any of the victims. That's tonight's live look outside the Beltway from Special Report. We'll be right back.